guys. Welcome back to the ThinkerNick podcast. I'm your host, Nick Daniels, and I'm joined by Nicola Tyler. Nicola, how are you doing in South Africa?
Very well, thanks. All good?
Fantastic. Good to hear. I'm really excited about today's episode as it is the first live in-guest podcast that we are doing, which is in studio in my bedroom. And it is a friend of mine. His name is Trent. His name is Trent Richardson. He is from Australia. He schooled in Australia. He went on to study sports science in Brisbane. After studying sports science, he had a stint at playing rugby league semi-professionally in France. Unfortunately, due to 2 knee injuries, it forced him to retire from rugby. And he decided to pursue a career in education. So he was teaching in London for 2 years and decided to move over to Vietnam, where we currently are now. I met Trent through working at the same organization as him, and we simply just love to train. We loved our fitness, we love to train together, and now I am an active member of Quickfix Science, which is Trent's side hustle. So welcome to the show, Trent. It's great to have you on.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So the first thing we're going to look at is basically what is a side hustle. And I read a book called Side Hustles by Chris Gillimblew. And basically what this book does is it's basically a step-by-step guide of how you can take an idea and turn it into a side hustle that generates income without quitting your day job. So that was my interpretation of a side hustle when I started the ThinkerNick podcast. Nicola, I want to ask you, what is a side hustle to you?
Well, basically, Nick, a side hustle is anything that you do on the side outside of, let's say, a 9-to-5 job, although that's sort of a vague territory today, particularly post-COVID. But pretty much outside of your hours and terms of employment, a side hustle is a business that you probably set up to generate additional income. That's my understanding. It's like a spinning plate. So you're running like crazy on the treadmill called work, and you've got some spinning plates to help you do something else.
Awesome. So Treno, let's talk a bit about you and a bit about your side hustle. What is Quickfix?
Quickfix Science is a group exercise class that combines high-intensity interval training, strength training, and some functional exercises to gain muscle and lose fat. Quickfix progressively overloads resistance training volume and enhances metabolism through targeting specific training heart rate zones. We do this in sort of a balanced, well-integrated, synergistic manner. We do this outdoors in Ho Chi Minh City at the moment.
Awesome. And I mean, like I said, I'm an active customer or client of Quickfix Science, and we actually had a session this morning. It's great sense of community in that. The next question I want to dive into is why would someone want to have a side hustle? And I'm going to start with myself. I did it because the time that I wasn't working, so the extra time and free time, additional time that I had, I wanted to use that time to do something constructive, to do something where I can learn and grow, and something that I'm passionate about. And that's why I started ThinkerNick, the ThinkerNick podcast with Nicola as well. So for me, it was basically about pursuing something I'm passionate about other than my day job. And that ties in nicely with exactly what a side hustle is, which is, I'm not generating income at the moment, but hopefully in the future, that is something that I will be able to do. So Nicola, why do you think people would want to start a side hustle?
That's a good point, Nick. And great to meet you, Trent. And when are you moving to Cape Town? Let's get the community and that thing going. I think it's possibly a few reasons. Work for some people is everything. I was very fortunate to find a job that I love, work that I love. So getting up for me every day to go to work hasn't really felt like going to work. There's been days where it's been like, oh gosh, have I got to do this again? But for the most part, if I take the average days, it's a minimal number of times. It's not like that for everybody. For some people, work is a means to an end, not the end in itself. So it doesn't satisfy all your needs. It's not to say you've got a bad job or a bad boss, but there's something that you're not getting met through work. So I think some people might set up a side hustle to satiate another desire. Let's call it a passion or a hobby. And that might be the case for you, Trent. But I think another reason is work doesn't always meet your financial needs. So I remember having a friend years ago. She ended up divorced. She had 2 young kids. She was side hustling all over the place. She had a job and lots of spinning plates. And for her, it was very definitely a financial thing. She needed to earn extra money. And then when she got extra money, she wanted to earn extra money. So it went from a need to a desire. So I reckon it's a pursuit of passion. It's a financial need. And I guess it could be just a point of interest, in monetizing a hobby or something like that.
Yeah. So Trent, what was your why? Why did you start Quickfix? Why Quickfix in general?
Yeah, my why. So where do I start?
Yeah.
I am a biology teacher and science teacher here in Ho Chi Minh City. And like Nick said, before I went into education, I'd studied exercise and sport science, thinking I would go down the pathway of being a physiotherapist. And I actually worked in a physio as a physio aide for a year and absolutely hated it. I hated that people would come in with a sore ankle and you'd give them a little massage, give them their exercises, they'd do the exercises there and they'd leave. I'd come back the next week and I'd say, my ankle's still sore.
Yeah.
Okay, did you do your exercises? Mm-hmm. No. Well, what do you expect?
Yeah.
And so I sort of got turned off that just because of that sort of thing. And then after doing my ACL twice, I fell in love with the rehab side of things. Mm-hmm. I love the push. I love the drive. I love the goals that someone could set you and you could achieve those goals. I came back from my second ACL reconstruction in about 8 months, my first one in 7 months. So I love that rehab thing. A normal ACL would take you 9 or 12 months. So my passion really come from tearing my ACLs, which isn't anything I'd advise you to do.
I've actually done it.
Yeah. Nick currently has a torn ACL, so can't wait to rip him the rehab buys.
Yeah.
So yeah, my passion come from the rehab side of things. So when I finished my degree, I played in France and I come back and I was rehabbing. And I had this fork in the road where I decided to go in to do my master's in occupational therapy or education. And I'd always loved working with kids and sports coaching as I was at uni. And I decided to go into education. And I absolutely hated the theory. Oh my God, it was ridiculous. Yeah. They would teach you about this ideal classroom. All the kids would sit up nice and straight and they would love learning and they would just want to be there.
Yeah.
You get into a classroom, it's the complete opposite. It's like a little circus and they're running around and they've got no idea what they want to do. So I hated the theory, but once I got into the classroom, I loved it. I loved working with kids. I loved that passion, that energy that they had. I went to London, traveled all around Europe. It took me around the world and I still love teaching now. It's such a great lifestyle. It's great work with kids, the energy. Will I teach forever? I don't think so. And I think this was my ignition to sort of get something started, get the ball rolling for something bigger and better later on in life. When I moved to Ho Chi Minh City, I couldn't find a gym. I couldn't find a community. I couldn't find something that really took my exercise and my fitness passion to the next step. I tried various gyms in Ho Chi Minh City and it ended up with just Nick and I working out at the gym that we had at school. And there were some pretty ripped sessions.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
And so I come up with the idea pretty early on, probably a month or so after I arrived in Ho Chi Minh City and just thought, there's a niche here, as a niche. And it took me probably 6 months, 8 months to get the ball actually rolling. And my 2 goals were, don't worry about money for the first year and do it for 12 months. They were my 2 goals. So 3 or 4 times a week, I'd turn up, I'd bring my kettlebells and my dumbbells and we would just work out in the park. Some weeks, no one would turn up. I'd just work out by myself. But progressively, we started to build a community. And that was so rewarding. We got this community, everyone would turn up, it was high fives, chatting away. And it just took away the intimidation of a gym or a fitness class you would normally turn up to. You would turn up to a fitness class anywhere and you walk in and you're absolutely shitting yourself. Turn up to a gym and there's 15 machines. You're like, oh, fuck, what do I do? Yeah. So Quickfix tries to sort of buck that trend and tries to welcome everyone, all new clients. It's like sort of like a big family. Everyone's contributors. We try to make it more of a community vibe than a gym class. But obviously the exercise and the fitness is a little bonus from that.
Yeah. And it's a blessing in disguise that you tore those ACLs because Quickfix as a result, you're keeping me in shape, mate.
Yeah.
So I'm appreciative of that. in terms of getting going, how do you sort of, Nicola, I'm going to pose this to you first. How do you sort of get going when starting a side hustle? And once it's, you got the ball rolling, because it's something that you're doing on the side, is it important to inform your current employer about your side hustle? What are your thoughts on that?
So there's really two questions in there. The one is, how do you get going with a side hustle? And Trent's already shared with us what got him going, and there was a level of persistence. The other thing is, what do you do about your current employer, which I think is a big deal, because then there's sort of this gray area. So let's take them separately. How do you get going? I think, I can't remember who said it, but I think Liz Wiseman wrote it in her one book, Multipliers. Motivation gets you going, habit keeps you going. So one's the enthusiasm, but the other is just the repetition. I think a lot of people start side hustles and then give up. It's like, if it's not producing the results that you want, if it's not meeting a specific need, if you don't make money fast enough, it's like, I can't be bothered. And then you try something else and can't be bothered, and you try something else. If a side hustle is going to become a business, I think you've got to keep going. And you've got to keep going even when it doesn't work, because it's only the persistence and the adaptation of your effort to meet a particular need that allows you to actually start something that you could eventually call a business. So there's a tenacity, there's a grit, there's an effort that's required for something to keep going. To get going is just motivation. It's just got to get going, which means you might have got to start a website. I mean, Nick, with the podcast, you've had me rallying, doing stuff. I'm like, hang on, I'm coming. Hold on, I'm coming. So I was in a session this week with a client, and someone did a presentation, and he spoke about the chihuahuas. So Nick's been my chihuahua to get and sometimes that's a good thing. You might have the own motivation, but then someone else also keeps you going. That's not necessarily a bad thing. So I think personal motivation and why you're doing it is an important way of getting going. But keeping going, I think, is much more important than getting going. It's like you can go to gym once. That's why I'm saying, when's Trent coming to Cape Town? It's like, I haven't been a member of gym for 18 months, and I rejoined last week actually. I've been once, partly I've been on the road, but I've been once. And I go there and I'm exactly like you said, Trent, you look at all this equipment and you're like, oh, should I do the stairs? Should I do the machine? And so I sort of find myself faffing. If I don't go with a plan, I faff, and then I leave thinking I haven't done much. The other thing is the employer side. So I've got to ask Trent a question. Did you tell your employer?
Yes, I did. I was very transparent with my employer. I just said, this is what I want to do on the side. Like I said, I'm a biology science teacher, but I just said from the get-go, this is what I want to do. What are your thoughts on that? Can I do this?
Right.
And they just said, as long as it doesn't interfere with the job that you're doing and the outcomes you're producing, then that's fine. And I've actually been running a few wellbeing classes at our school for the employees to join in with to help enhance their wellbeing. So yeah, I was 100% transparent with them. I think just to avoid anything that come up down the road where there's a little conflict of interest, or something happened, or I didn't produce something for work, or didn't do my job properly, it wouldn't fall back on that. Hopefully.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, I applaud that. So Nick, what have you done with ThinkerNick?
So with ThinkerNick, I have not been transparent. And the reason why is because I'm not generating any income. So my view on this is not that I don't want to be transparent. I'm happy to tell my current employer what I'm doing. I'm sure some of them even have me on Facebook. They can probably see what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? But I just haven't been transparent because this is just a hobby for me. It's like going for a run on a Saturday. Rather than going for a run, I'm just, podcasting instead. So for me, it is, in terms of my specific side hustle, I don't think it's very necessary right now anyway. That's just my view on it. So Nicola, what do you think?
I think I like Trent's approach. I think it's good to be transparent. I mean, I've got a business partner in Business Results Group, and we do talk about business. So I told Kirst that I was doing this, And I didn't tell her after the first one because to be perfectly honest, I was like, well, let's keep going. It was like, and it has. And I think I told her after the pilot episode or episode 1. But again, there's no profit in that. I've also got a side hustle, a non-profit thing. It's called the Thinking Fund, and it involves some bunny rabbits, which maybe I'll tell you about later. That's also transparent. I do think it's better to be transparent because exactly as you said, Trent, what if it does turn into something? And then suddenly, 6 or 12 months down the line, you've been doing this whole thing on the side. There's a reason why you have a bit on the side. It's like, there's merit in some of these terms. So I think it is better to share, so that if it does ever monetize, it doesn't come as a surprise to your employer, because people don't like surprises like that. And I get why you haven't, Nick, because it is more like a hobby for you. You've got a sound background, you're interested in learning. The motivations were all around mentorship and reading and growth. So it's almost like for you, it's like attending a webinar, but in a different way. Exactly. Would I tell someone I'm attending a webinar? Probably not. No.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Nicola, you just piqued my interest there when you spoke about, is it the Thinking Fund? Do you want to just touch on that a little bit?
Oh, I'd love to. I don't want to capitalize on your podcast, but I got a crazy.
our podcast.
Our podcast. Sorry. I got a crazy idea. There's a place up the west coast of, I guess it's slightly south east of us, up the eastern side of Cape Town, in a place called Plet. And I sometimes find myself driving between Plettenberg Bay and Cape Town. I was driving back one day, went into a shop, and I saw this bunny rabbit, this rabbit in the shop, and I was already paying. And I said at the counter, "Have you got any more of those rabbits?" And they said, "Yeah." And I ran to the back, and there were loads of them. It was like a whole warren of the damn things. So I grabbed this rabbit, put it in my car. I thought, there's an open studio for artists in Komaki, which is the village where I've got a house and mostly where I live. And what they do once a year is they open up all their studios to the public. So they're all private artists, some incredibly talented people. And they open their homes and their studios to the public. The public can come and they can not only see their studio and see their art and creativity, but they can also buy art and creativity. So it was started by a friend of mine, Laurel Holmes, who's a superbly talented artist. She does a lot of printmaking, and she's really outstanding. Her work's excellent. So I phoned her and I said, "I've got an idea." And she's, "Right, what is it?" I said, "Why don't we give all the artists in the open studio a rabbit? And what we want you to do is we want you to paint the rabbit or decorate the rabbit or do something with the rabbit. And then what we'll do is we'll auction all the rabbits after the open studio, and we'll raise money to sponsor a kid in our community." Down the road, we've got two, what we call very big sort of township communities, from a disadvantaged community to go and study art or design in Cape Town. So it turned out that they needed what they call a CSI project to demonstrate that they were doing something social for the community. So I said, "Well, I'll buy the rabbits, and if you can rally the artists." So the short version of a long story is we've got all these artists are busy with their rabbits. The deadline is the 15th of November. I'll send you a pic or a link, and you can maybe share it with the listeners. And so all these rabbits are being painted and decorated, and some of them are amazing. I've seen some of them already. They're fantastic. And then in probably the end of January, Candace Berman, who is a fantastic curator of art and has her own gallery in Johannesburg, in Bryanston, Johannesburg. I wouldn't say she's like a friend of a friend, and I've been to her gallery before, but I bumped into her at an art exhibition in Johannesburg a few weeks ago. And Candace has agreed to come on board and not only showcase the rabbits, to do an exhibition of rabbits in Johannesburg, but also to help us do the auction. We're hoping that the rabbits will travel far and wide, that they get some international homes. I'm sort of prodding some of my mates overseas to get involved. And it's I don't know what we'll do next year, but it's created a life of its own. And that's, I think, what side hustles do. That was an idea. It wasn't even a hustle. But it's amazing. I'll share some details with you.
Good. Awesome. And if you want to maybe give them a follow on Instagram, it's at The Thinking Fund. And it's a very, very cool project that you have going on there. So, Nicola, you touched on, pursuing a side hustle, and then a lot of people just give up. And it's that persistence and that discipline, which I've found to be so challenging. An example for me would be like one episode compared to another episode. One will do really well, and then you'll have another episode that won't do as well. And you're like, oh shit, is this really for me? Is this really what I want to do? So that was like a really big challenge, or it's been a very, very big challenge for me when doing this podcast. Trent, I want to ask you about Quickfix. Sort of what were the challenges, and actually what were the challenges and the rewards of starting up Quickfix Science?
Good question. The challenges, I think one of the challenges for me, like you said, was turning up and being persistent. For me, there were some sessions where I would turn up at 6 a.m. and no one turned up, or turn up and there was one or two people. And I think that was part of doing it, is just persistently saying, I am going to commit to what sessions I'm doing. And I think that allowed the community to build, the Quickfix community to build. I think that was probably one of the most rewarding things, is seeing, especially as lockdown was starting to roll in, we could get groups of 15, 20 people together working out. Gyms were closed, so there's a huge community that we could just build on. People loved coming to Quickfix. It was sort of like a movement. People wanted to be part of it. And one of the big challenges now is sort of rebuilding that community. After such a heavy lockdown, we've lost lots of big players in the old Quickfix community. But like we said, we're all very welcoming. We want to rebuild. One of the most rewarding things as well would have been, like Nicola said, just getting it started and just getting the ball rolling. I think I jumped in pretty quick. I was just like, what can I lose? There's nothing to lose. And that was pretty rewarding to see it go all the way to the big community, where we have, 60 people signed up to our Quickfix community. Mm-hmm. We have people who are always going to be part of that Quickfix community as well. So I think that's probably one of the biggest rewards.
Awesome. And I just want to touch on community as well, because Quickfix Science has a great community here in Saigon. A great bunch of people, like you said. You walk into class or out to class in the park and you just feel welcome. And I want to touch on communities because I want to talk about the two different types of communities. So right now, your Quickfix is based on a community of people actually having to be there. And my side hustle is based on a community that is all an online presence. And I'm going to bring up this topic because it's relevant to today. COVID, right? One of the biggest challenges for you was the coronavirus and everyone leaving, and having to go online and not being able to make money online. Whereas the online space is absolutely thriving because of COVID. So have you thought at all of maybe taking the business online?
Yes and no. So I thought about doing the whole online thing, but it's such a super saturated market. There are so many different YouTube channels, so many different apps out there, same book, different cover. It's just, I suppose, about making that experience different for the user or the customer. How do they feel valued? How do they feel better? What's going to make their experience better at the end of the day? So there's definitely, I don't think there's as much room for the online marketing, online move. I would like to sort of move into an app, especially for elderly people in Australia. That would be my next sort of goal.
Awesome. The reason why I asked about, or one of the reasons I asked about online is basically scaling a business. And now, Nicola, what you do for a living is you help people make money. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to you now. I'm going to hand over to you. And why don't you just tell us about scale? You've now heard about our side hustles. You know what we're doing. I'm currently not generating an income from it. Trent has a nice little side hustle, and I mean, if we could grow the side hustle, it would just be phenomenal. So I'm going to hand over to you. Give us, what do you think are the options for us in terms of scale?
So, I mean, scale comes in sort of different packages. So if you were starting, for example, a tech company, let's say financial technology, they call it fintech, there's a lot of development that's required in that space. And you might start out with a bit of a side hustle saying, I think I'm going to build an app to help people, monitor their insurance payments or something. And then suddenly what you discover in that space is nothing is quick. You've got to do this, and then you've got to do that, and then you've got to fix a bug, and then you've got to put something in the back end, and then you've got to put a patch in. So there are certain sort of startup businesses that require funding. So you can't scale without money. The other thing is if you've got like a small services business. So let's say a laundromat. I think I've mentioned laundromats once before, but let's say you've got a laundromat and you start a little side hustle and it's actually a shop and it's got a destination. What you can do to expand or scale that is develop it into a franchise model. And to make something a franchise model, you've got to have a highly replicable system. So if you take a McDonald's, a patty is a patty is a patty, a bun is a bun is a bun. So you can basically cookie cutter your business. But behind that is a system. Behind that is a set of what we call standard operating procedures. So I think a lot of entrepreneurs, and I put myself into this bucket, is what we sometimes forget to do is to document your methodologies. Now, essentially, if you have a salary business, that's a hugely valuable thing to have. And it's not to say, put it step by step in a spreadsheet. What professional businesses have got is today, it would all be interactive, but you've actually got documented process flows. And, you click on that button and the document that you need opens up. And sometimes these can be embedded into the back end of project management systems like Asana and stuff like that. So it's like, what's your methodology? So if you're doing an app, Trent, you're going to have to figure out what's your methodology, because what you're really doing is you're asking your user to replicate it. So whether it's a shop or a service type business, you've got to make sure that that's documented. Otherwise, you've got nothing to scale. It's just all in your head. It's completely different if you're scaling, let's say, a factory. There was a great case study called Gossard 150. And Gossard used to make tights. Ladies after the war used to wear tights. Yeah. Those awful things that you pull up and then they keep falling down. They're shockers. But they were a very big part of women's fashion after the First and Second World War. And Gossard was one of the world leaders in making tights, stockings. And what they realized is if a factory got to 150 people, the temptation now, and the demand is increasing, the temptation is to make the factory bigger. So let's add on another set of machines, let's extend it into the car park, et cetera, et cetera. But what this study proved was that when they got to 150 people in a factory, the factory became less productive, not more productive, if they made it bigger. So what they would do to expand or scale is build another factory and then fill the other factory to the capacity of 150 people and then build another factory. So it was known as the Gossard 150 business model. And then you've got scale in social media, which is, it's almost like this unicorn space. They talk about unicorns as being like $1 billion companies and $10 billion companies that sort of emerge overnight. And these seem to be scaled based on reputation and what we call viral interest. And a lot of people at the beginning of this movement, this social media movement, were trying to design things to be viral. They were trying to make them viral, only to discover that people like Susan Boyle would jump on YouTube out of nowhere. I mean, everyone's, I think, seen that video. And suddenly she's got millions of viewers. Now, you couldn't have designed that to be viral. It was a completely random, it wasn't completely random, but it was a seemingly random event. What is it? Must have been almost 20 years ago now, where this older lady from Scotland who'd always wanted to sing with some social challenges arrived on a stage. You could see the judges rolling their eyes. They YouTubed it. They put it on YouTube. They filmed it rather, and they put it on YouTube. And the next minute, this thing rocketed to success. And that scaled Susan Boyle's career. So there's this weird place that we call social media today, which I think is starting to be tested in terms of privacy. But it's popularity. And I think that popularity, a bit like Disney's very popular, but it was also backed up by good content. So scale isn't a button that you press. Scale is extremely dependent on what it is you're trying to achieve. So in this world, Nick, what you would want is lots of visibility on social media. Without social media, people can't access the ThinkerNick podcast. What you would want, Trent, I would imagine, is lots of people using your app, which is to some extent would be promoted through social media and probably Instagram and things like that. Yeah.
So I'm glad you said that, Nicola, because scale for me aligns with my goals. What do I want ThinkerNick to be? And I've got some pretty ambitious ones, to be honest. I want to be right up there with the millions of subscribers. It's a big goal. It's going to take some time, but I'm willing to put in the work to get there. Trent, what is the goal for Quickfix Science?
Quickfix Science, I want Quickfix Science to be a huge holistic exercise sports center. So Quickfix HQ. At the moment, this is sort of the baby steps. Like you said, I've got huge aspirations and huge goals. And most likely I would like to set it up back home in Australia. But yeah, I would love to have an exercise center that had physios, exercise and sports scientists, podiatrists, occupational therapists, a huge functional area, classes, gym, everything in one spot. And touching on what Nicola said, it would be fantastic to franchise that, drop those all around Australia. But yeah, huge aspirational goals for Quickfix. And I think I've always had those goals that I would love to transition out of teaching, have my own sort of Quickfix HQ. That would be the ultimate, to be honest, and just create a vibe, create a community in that spot with people, with like-minded people who would love to run that, like-minded people like myself who have a passion for exercise, a passion for working with people.
Great. So I'm not going to touch too much on our goals, Nicola, because we have touched on them in our pilot episode. So make sure you go and listen to that if you haven't yet. I just want to say a massive thank you to both of you, but more importantly to Trent, because we've had a few cracks at the podcast, and this is a great podcast, and it's great to have you on the show. We appreciate your time. You've made a really big impact on my life, and I'm glad I met you, brother. So thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.
And Nicola, again, Thank you very much for your time on a Saturday morning.
Pleasure.
We'll see you guys later. Thanks very much. Tune into the next episode.
Okay. Cheers, guys. Nice to see you, Trent. Bye now.
Good to see you.
Bye.
Ciao. Bye.
For more news and content about ThinkerNick, go to www.thinkernick.com or visit our Facebook or Instagram pages @ThinkerNick.